go ahead and get started. I am really excited. I love sim routines. A little bit about me, and you'll see that I have a picture up, and that's my computer that I'm going to be sharing my screen with. But I also find that I also like to have another computer up. So I have one that I kind of turn and talk into, and then I have another one in which I am sharing. So hope that doesn't lead to any confusion. So a little bit about me. My name is Morri, and I am the coordinator of innovative learning in Powhatan County Public Schools, which is a little county right outside of Chesterfield, outside of Richmond, Virginia. We only have 5 schools. So there are 3 elementary, 1 high school, 1 middle school. And I have been doing PD for sim routines. I was looking at it for 12 years. So I am absolutely enthralled with sim content enhancement routines. And I hope after today, you see some of the value in those as well. I originally started off in Columbia, Maryland as a high school teacher. I've taught social studies, which means I've taught every single one of the social sciences except for psychology. Oh, actually, I did teach psychology online. So government, economics, sociology, psychology, all of those fun things that fit under the social sciences. Then I moved to Virginia and worked at Midlothian High School for a time period. Then I switched over and I actually taught in the Chesterfield online program for 7 years. And now I'm in Powhatan County. So my role here is a lot of different things, but really I just count myself as a big teacher support to help them grow and move in their next step to be able to support students and families in their learning. So let's go ahead and dive into our presentation. So what are we going to do today? We are going to, and let me silence my phone because it's already gone off twice. We're going to go an overview of just what is sim, in case you don't have any experience with sim at all. Then we're going to go over what is the clarifying routine. And when you get, you should be getting this book in the mail if you haven't gotten it already. And a lot of you said you hadn't, don't worry about it. I've got you covered. We got links to parts of the books and other materials that you can use as we walk through the presentation. Then we're going to co-construct one. And in this, you're going to be the students and I'm going to be the teacher, and we're going to work together to build the clarifying table and walk through the whole routine as if you were my class. And then finally, you're going to get to build one yourself. I'm going to walk you through that process step by step. And then we're going to do some practice and looking at the QD review a little bit more, looking at a couple of articles. And so that's what we're going to pick up tomorrow. So we have 2 hours today and we have about an hour tomorrow. So just wanted to let you know where we were going. All right. So you have the link that I have been putting into the chat for the personal notes. And so I'll drop that in one more time, in case anybody needs it. And I'm getting a delay of my chat coming up. Maybe can someone else take what's in the chat and drop it in? Apparently I can't get my chat box to come up on my screen. It is not working effectively. But I wanted to show you what's inside of your personal notes. So in your personal notes, the first thing you have is, this is the presentation that I'm giving. And so that is a link right there for your personal, so you can refer back to this presentation even when I am not around. And then also, we are going to, oh, my chat finally just came up. We are also then going to be able to see some of these slides. These slides are kind of hard on an online environment to really get in and have time to think. So this is your wait time slide. So I will probably give you a couple minutes each time we're going to go into a breakout room. And this is going to give you something to be able to talk about, because we want our students to be able to have something to interact with. So for these slides, these are for you. No one else sees it. It's your own copy. Once you click use template, it's just going to make a copy in your Google Drive. And so that's going to be able to help you. And then also, because when you're in discussion board or when you're in breakout rooms, you can't see my main slides. So you also have the questions are going to be developed in here. And any links that you're going to need throughout the presentation are in here. So it would be great for you just to have that one opened up and ready to go. All right. Any questions so far on the personal notes, or anybody having difficulty opening them? Okay, I'll keep on moving. So we are about to break out into 4 different breakout rooms. And so you'll just randomly, you can select the one that you want to go to. Doesn't matter. All of them are going to have somebody in it. And I would love for one person to just kind of be that person that stands up and takes the charge. Don't all take the charge, but just to kind of lead the group discussion. And what we're really trying to do is see what practices we currently use when teaching vocabulary. So these are the 3 prompts. And while you're in your breakout rooms, yesterday we had 100 people on, but today, since we've only got 25, when you get into your breakout rooms, it'll be pretty small. So go ahead and just come off mute and have those authentic conversations. So we're gonna break out now, and we'll be in there for about 8 minutes. So take your time and go through these questions and really brainstorm about what you do to support students in your classroom with vocabulary.
I have a question before we go.
Yes.
How did you say we were able to use our notes?
So
are we able to type on it?
Yep, those notes are going to, once you click that use template button.
Okay.
That's going to make a copy in your Google Drive. They'll be just for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In any presentation, if you take out where it says edit and everything after it, and you just type in template /preview and put I gave you.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I got to jump into 3 of the breakout rooms, but I really saw some robust conversations going on of teaching and reteaching, the importance of vocabulary, and how it's critical to identify the words. The last conversation I was in was actually even talking about some of the technology that can be helpful or is sometimes limiting in being able to help our students decode and understand vocabulary. So now I'm going to switch. I always feel like it's important to get your voices heard as early as possible. I'm going to switch and just spend a couple of minutes on going over what is CIM and share you a little bit about that. So if you'll do me a favor in the chat, will you write, have you ever heard of CIM, or have you ever done a content enhancement routine prior? So you just write yes, no, or you could say a little, never, a lot. Great, it sounds like we've got a lot of newbies. That makes me excited. I love it, I love it. All right, so let me just give you a little bit of background so you understand what it is that you are getting introduced to. So CIM is the Strategic Instructional Model, which came out of the University of Kansas Research Center on Learning, and it has been around for over 30 years. And so they are a research group that develops routines and strategies that go into the classrooms, and they actually practice this and they revise it based on the evidence they collect from the student data in which they are seeing within the classroom. And so there's a link in there in your notes. You don't need to go there now, but if you go, once you get your book, just to kind of know what that is, if you just look at like pages 1 and 2, they'll explain what they thought was kind of the challenge going on in the co-taught classroom or just in the general ed classroom And then you'll actually get the data that is behind it. And you'll see the results, and you can see that they went into different socioeconomic levels, they went into different grade levels, and then they have their published results. So that's one of those things that this is different than just going on to Teachers Pay Teachers and finding something, or someone had a really good idea and it looks like it's going to work well. This is a evidence-based practice. And so if you need anything that's ESSA approved, that all of these are ESSA approved as well. And they can be used with every level of student when we talk about the content enhancement routines. So the content enhancement routines are really teachers, students, routines in which support different ways of learning within the classroom. The learning strategies are going to be more on the special ed. They are learning a specific strategy to meet a specific skill deficit. And so to help students be able to master that skill and prepare them to do that strategy on their own as they hopefully may phase out of special education. So what are the different content enhancement routines? So we have the ones that are planning, leading and learning. And so you've got course, unit, lesson. Course is great. It basically replaces your syllabus, but you're also co-constructing all of these with your students. So there's never a time where they don't get some input in their learning, even in how the course is going to run throughout the year. What we're going to focus on today is the clarifying routine, and that it comes under the explaining text, topics, and details. Yesterday was science. I actually did the framing routine, and last year, well, maybe not last year, maybe the year before, we did vocabulary linking with this same group. So we've been doing explaining text, topics, and details for several years with our co-teaching academies. You also then have higher order reasoning, which these are diving into the students creating the question, then building ideas around the question and research. So it's kind of like a PBL wrapped into that when you also wrap it with a quality assignment. And then there's teaching cause and effects. And so this one is really good for having students understand what became for and what came after. And then there's a scientific augmentation, which this is using reasoning skills to produce outcomes. Then we have the teaching of concepts. And that's one that we really struggle with because a lot of us try and teach a concept as a term. And so students get to know a definition, but they don't get to understand the full concept, and they don't transfer that knowledge then every time that concept appears. So an example might be a civil war, and then your examples are going to be the American Civil War and the Mexican Civil War and the Haiti Civil War. So you could have, or the Haitian Civil War. So you could have different ones, but it's a concept instead of just the term of defining a civil war. And so that for that, we have anchoring, which means we're going to really solidly build that foundation. We have concept comparison. That's when students usually typically get confused between this one and that one. And that helps identify the concepts clearly that align with one versus the other. And then concept mastery, which is them getting the big picture of that concept. And finally, we have increased performance, which is quality assignment, recall enhancement, and order routines. And so those are just little snapshots that you can use in order to help your students have better recall of information. And again, it's all evidence-based. So the one we are working on today is clarifying. So clarifying, I want you to write down in the chat real quick, drop in what do you think when you clarify something? What is it that you are doing? So I've got one person said that they're making it clear. Further explanation. Explaining, making it easier to understand. Looking at it in a different way. Making the idea accessible to students. relating parts, questioning it. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. And so what I want you to do is when we think about vocabulary with our students, one of the things that we're going to do, because most of you, it seemed like, are in a co-teaching situation, I would hope, is to think about when we're planning. And then one of the things we want to do is we want to plan smarter. I remember when this was introduced to me, let me hide this for a moment so it's not in my screen. One of the things we want to do is when we plan, we really want to focus on what is it that we are trying to accomplish, right? What are our goals? What are our objectives? The more intentional we are, then the better off our students are. Then we're going to map out the critical content. So we've decided what is the question? What is the skill we want students to do? We're going to map out what content is critical for students to understand, to walk away, to be able to answer that question. Then we're going to analyze for learning difficulties. I heard one teacher in our conversation was like, I wish I had my co-teacher every period, even with my honors students. I totally agree. I think all teachers should have co-teachers, and I think new teachers should have 3 years with a co-teacher to get them started, but that's my own personal bias. If we're going to have medical students that have residencies, I feel like our teachers should have residencies to be able to support them so that they can support all students. So we're going to analyze for learning difficulties. So what can Johnny do versus what can Teresa do versus do we need to do it large group? Do we need to do it small group? Do we need to be able to teach this on different days? How are we going to chunk it? So knowing our population, and that sometimes means that we plan differently for different classes because we have different learning needs in our different classes. And so after we've kind of done that co-planning, then becomes the teaching part, which is then we're going to reach those decisions. How are we going to enhance this lesson? How are we going to make sure that we're providing some engagement or choice within the lesson? Then we do what we all do, which is we teach. And then we come back and we evaluate. And so we evaluate the lesson, we evaluate the student outcomes, and we look at, did we meet the goals at the beginning? Can our students actually answer that critical question? Did we provide the right learning difficulties? And then, you know what we all do? We adapt, right? The next time we're going to do something similar, or we see the identity of the need to reteach. So just think about that as we go through of how can you use this routine inside of that planning landscape. And so one of the other things that I love about SIM is they give you this idea of I do it. So first the teacher constructs it. You should never use a routine without the teacher having pre-done it before, because you want to know what it is that you're looking for. If you haven't done it before, if you don't even have a sketch, then it's really hard to guide people to where you want to lead them. Then we construct it as a class, which I'm going to demonstrate in a couple of minutes. And then as your students get familiar with it, then you could allow them to work in small groups, or you could allow them to work as individuals on a vocabulary terms that they need to have some reteaching. And so when you're doing this is also this other part of a cue, do, review sequence. So I cue my students, what is it that we're about to do? And then I teach them the do, and then I review with them. Did we do it? Did you get out of this routine what the objective was? And so I want you to hold those pieces, just throw a lot at you, this whole idea of smarter planning, the I do it, we do it, you do it, and this cue, do, review. I tell them what I'm about to do, I do it, and then we review what we just did. You guys are English. Doesn't that sound a lot like writing? When we always say, you know, that's your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. And so think about doing that when you're presenting things with your students. All right, so let's go into what is the clarifying routine. So we've just talked about SIM, we've just talked about some planning as we were thinking about it. And now we're going to look at what is this routine that we're going to do. And so for every content enhancement routine, there are always 3 parts. There's the clarifying table, which is the device. And so every device has its own name. And then there's the linking steps, which is an acronym for the device. And you can find this all within your guidebook. If you wanted to look on page 5, it's got a summary if you had your guidebook with you. And so the linking steps are there as a memory tool to help students remember the process. Because if they're going to do it on their own, we have to have them remember the process. And so our linking steps here are step 1, designate a term. Step 2, explore the clarifiers. Step 3, figure out core ideas. Step 4, identify knowledge connectors. Step 5, note its usage or concept. Step 6, explain what it is not. And step 7, set up a sample sentence. So when you guys threw things in the chat, a lot of that stuff that you put in there is what you're going to put on the routine. And I heard a lot of that conversation about different parts of that inside of those small group conversations. And then our cue, do, review is that instructional sequence. Again, what are we going to do and what are the expectations? Then doing it with our students and then reviewing what they did to make sure they understood. So a lot of times students will read something or they will participate in taking notes, but we really truly need to know, do they understand it? Not just could they do the tasks in which we were asking them to do. So this is what a clarifying table looks like. So you can see it's got the terms, the core idea, the clarifiers, the knowledge connectors, and this is either real world or this could be something that you know everybody has had an experience with. Then this is examples or descriptions that match. This is don't get it confused with, or this is not an example. And then we want to tie it up in a bow, and that's your example sentence. So when you leave, you're going to have one of these created on your own. But first, I'm going to walk you through a co-construction. And so these are the things that we want the clarifying table to help us do. And I'm going to give you a minute. I've been talking, but I think you can read. So I'm going to let you go ahead and read these 5 bullets on your own. Now, looking at those 5, drop in the chat, which one do you feel, if that was the case, would really help your students the most? The students that you had last year, let's just take them for example. Which one of these things, if they got help with this, you think would really make the biggest difference to that population? I love it. Yeah, that prior knowledge and examples. Sometimes we forget how the brain works, and the brain works by tying new information to old information. So even though we hear accessing prior knowledge all the time, it is critical for the synapses in the brain to say, hey, I want to retain this. And then have a place to know, hey, that's connected to that. I want to get it back out. So we know how the brain works. We're really going to see how this device is going to be really helpful for our students. All right, so to get you in gear, what I want you to do now is that I'm going to put this in the chat. Hopefully I can put it in the chat. See how that worked last time. Yay. I'm going to put this link to the Padlets in the chat. And what I want you to do here is you're going to, on your notes, you can also find the link, and it's also in the chat. But I want you to identify key terms you often reteach. And then think about these different categories, and you can work inside of your personal notes if you want a couple of minutes. Think about these categories of reading skills, writing skills, authors, parts of speech, literary analysis. And if you want me to make another column, I can. And what are words that you typically have to reteach that fall under these? That you know, my kids don't get this. You normally have to go over this multiple times. I love seeing all the different ideas pop up. And if something that you think is already been listed, they do have little thumbs up. So you can just hit the thumbs up too, or just add it again if you want to. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. You can watch. Or if you have something in the chat, I'll drop it in for you. All right, look at all these great terms that are coming up.
How are we putting it on your sheet?
Excuse
or
me?
is it coming up? Is it coming up when we type on our sheet?
Yep, it's coming up.
Okay,
I'm showing what everybody can see. Mona, I dropped yours in for you and gave you the credit.
Thank you.
And so what I wanted you to see, and you will have the availability to go back to this, is that a lot of you have, I mean, most of these have thumbs ups next to them, right? And so this is going to be something that you can see that students across the board struggle with these. So if we're going to plan smarter, then we might want to identify those things that we, you know, as a common group can see are ones that we struggle with, which is why I had you kind of drop it in on here. And so let's go over just to the analyst so you can see it. So think about any of these things as maybe a term that you might pick, maybe not, after you see how it actually works. But I just wanted to give you a way for you to express yourself. Okay. Oh, wrong slideshow. I was on your personal notes. All right, so now we're going to go into the co-construction. So what I need you to do is I need you to have a little background knowledge, because what we're going to do, and this, I wouldn't necessarily do this with my students picking this because I need them to have background knowledge. But I think you guys are astute enough that we are going to just use this method so that you guys can learn a little bit more about the clarifying routine. So, and I hope the last name works out. So I would like, if your last name is A through E, you're going to help me out by reading page 6 through 7. And it's either in your guidebook or you can use the link that is there. And then group 2 is for people that have the last name of F through K. And you're going to read pages 8 through 9. but I mean, read, just skim it. We're not looking for, you don't need to highlight and do all of those things at this time. I just want you to have a general idea. And then also on group 3, you're going to do the same thing, but you are going to be doing it on page 10. And that is for our L through P. And then for those of you that have a Q through Z, you're going to read a summary article on the clarifying routine. Does anybody have a question on what their task is right now?
I just have a question again on how to get to this to read it.
So
I clicked on Padlet.
yeah, so in your notes, hopefully in your notes here, you should be able to click on any of these and they are a link.
Okay, I see.
I tried to make it as simple as possible. So you have the notes. And so all the links that you're going to need for the presentation in the notes. And also if you don't have your book, there's things linked there. But if you want to look it up in your book, that way you can do it as well. But thanks for asking.
Great. Yeah, this works. I can get it to come up.
All right, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to read. And that's also if you need to go to the bathroom real quick or something like that. And so we will start back at this at 10:05. At 10:05.
You're so terrible. You should go.
McMillan, where are we going? I'm kind of lost right now.
So you're going to be reading whichever your last name. So I typed my last name. And then you're going to, if you're on the notes, or if you have your book, then you would just click on this and it'll open up those pages for you. Or you.
I have the book. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes, but please let me know, do you need more time? Happy to give you more time if you need it. So if you got done the reading, will you just drop in done or finished or yes in the chat so I can kind of make sure we're ready to move on? All right, it looks like we have most people are done. I'm just gonna, I dropped in the chat 2 articles or 2 links before this. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop those in again. You can choose to open them or not, but I just wanted to show you. So this first one, and let me get the text size smaller. This first one is the checklist. On the first side is how do I build it? And the second side is how do I do it with students? And so these are actually all in your book, but this is our cue, do, review sequence. So you can see what the teacher is supposed to do in the cue, the steps that they're going to go over in the review. And so I just wanted to show you this because this is where I want you to not only be the students a little bit, I also want you to be the critics. So I'm going to lead you through the cue, do, review sequence as if you were my students. And in that, I'm going to need participation, which is hopefully why you read a little bit. You can give me some feedback. And then also, I want you just to see how it works, and then we can go over any questions you might have. Tomorrow, you're going to practice their cueing and your reviewing with colleagues. But I do feel like it's important for you to see how it works right off of the beginning. And so if you want to, you can open this up, but you can also just watch as I go ahead and do it, because originally what you would do is give your students a blank copy, but because we're doing this virtually, then what I'm going to be doing is some dragging and dropping and things of that nature and editing. So I would have already done my own version of this prior to using it with my class, right? So now I'm going to switch roles and I'm going to be your teacher, and I'm going to start off with our cue sequence. So if you will look at this and see if I'm doing the appropriate steps. So today, class, I'm so glad that you are here. We're going to use the clarifying routine. Remember, the clarifying routine helps us build connections for terms, helps us identify what it is and what it isn't, and also helps us just create a bigger picture of what this term is going to mean. And so I'm going to need you to follow along with me. I'm going to ask for your participation. So when I ask you to write in the chat and share your ideas, then I'd love for you to drop them in. I'm going to end up probably copying and pasting some of them from there, but also co-constructing with you as we move through this process. So I'm so excited that you're going to be involved with us. Remember, the reason why we use this clarifying one is because this is a term that can be kind of tricky. And I really want to make sure that you understand it completely. Okay, I'm going to stop. Is there any parts of the cueing step that I missed? If you look at what I was just talking about. Do you see how that might be different than how we always start with explaining what the goal is and why we're working together with our students? So that's one of those things that, you know, we want to allow the students to have a jumping off place and have very clear, before I've gone into the directions of what we're doing, I set the expectation to cue them up to be ready to follow those expectations. So that's one of the important processes in doing the evidence-based part, is making sure that we cue the students in. All right, now I'm going to flip over and I'm going to do the do, but I'm going to need to change my screen. So if you want to have a split screen, or if you just want to watch and see if I'm doing all the steps, that would be great. Sorry, so there's a fire alarm going on in my building, and luckily the principal just came on and said that it is a test. It is not a drill and there is no fire. So apologize for my silence. I was trying to figure out how the heck that was going to work if I had to leave. All right, so here we go. All right, so today, class, we're going to go over the term that is the clarifying routine. So we're going to look at the parts and components of the clarifying routine. And so I would like you to type in with me. You're not doing this right now. Yeah, I would like you to type in with me clarifying routine into the area that it says term. I would also like you to think, do you have any prior knowledge? Do you have any idea of different parts of the clarifying routine, of what do you think it means to clarify? Or when you read, what do you have that would be, make it, help you remember what is the purpose and what is the functions of the clarifying routine? So if you can drop that in the chat for me right now, that would be really, really helpful. So what are the purposes, or what are the things that make up the clarifying routine? Okay, so somebody said one of the things that makes up the clarifying routine is that you use the cue, do, review sequence. Okay, another is that it makes it easier, something easier to understand. I've also got that it's got linking steps. I'm loving all these answers coming in. Let me do a little formatting real quick so I can fit things in here. All right, you use a sequence of those linking steps. Part of it is going to have a clarifying table, is one of the parts. It's a step-by-step process to vocabulary. All right, and one of the things I'm also going to put in here is that it is used for reteaching vocabulary. So if you see, I had some things based off of the sides. And so I could have used those, or I could have used yours. And so the other part that I also want to add in that makes it a little bit different than some of the other ones is that we're going to use it, and I can't fit it in here probably, right? But we're going to use it with terms and peoples, events, and places. So thanks for giving me some clarifiers. If I need to identify what the clarifying routine is, these are going to be things that set it apart from other things. So let's go up here and look at our core idea. So our core idea is, how was this developed? What is our terminology for how the clarifying routine was developed? What did the people do? Right, we've got it as research-based. And then, can't see my cursor, sorry. And then it's research-based. And what are we trying to focus on that needed to have to be researched? And so what's our big focus when we're using the clarifying routine? What are we doing? Promoting understanding, making ideas clearer. Of words and phrases. And so let's see what we got here. Research-based, using evaluation to promote understanding and clarify, to promote understanding and clarify words and phrases when teaching vocabulary. Okay. All right. Is there any words that you want that are not here in your core idea that you as a class feel like we should be adding? And I'm going to take, somebody wrote that it's co-constructed by the students, and I'm going to drop that down in here as well. Okay, I see the word meaning. So we're going to promote understanding, and how about to clarify meaning of words, phrases when teaching vocabulary. Can I get some thumbs up if that is what you would like for it to be our core idea? And you can type in the chat, just thumbs up, or you can do a thumbs up. Do you think that is a good understanding of the core idea of the clarifying routine? I think you guys did a great job. One of the things that we have over here, as you can see, here's my cheat sheet. Ready? That I had one ready. This is, I can't have my teacher draft next to me and having to type it all in necessarily. So I do have some stuff that was already on the side in text boxes, so I could just drag it in if I needed to. And that's one of those things that I think is helpful. So the next thing that we want to do is, what are some things, what are some prior knowledge, what are some knowledge connectors that you think for the clarifying routine? And when we do knowledge connectors, these are real life examples that help you go, well, this is what's going to help me remember. Does anybody think of some real life examples? Maybe it's a skill that you already use or a method that you use that you would tie this to help build your memory. So go ahead and drop that in the chat for me. Okay, I see some some Freyer fans. We've got the Freyer graph. We've got the Freyer model. That this seems something that's similar to that. I even said that, you know, one of the things just as a knowledge connector for me, it seems a little bit like it was like, you know, the old flashcards, but you had to write all the stuff on it. You can see how you could have put this in a KWL chart. So those are the things when you go back to your prior knowledge and you think about like the Freyer graph, and it's like, oh, how does this then relate to the clarifying routine? And so now we're going to transition over to describing it or examples of it. So if I had to use words to describe that makes this different, what makes this different than anything else? Somebody else also dropped in concept web. I'm just gonna put that in here. It's a shared graphic organizer with teachers and students. And I like somebody else put in co-construction or collaboration, I apologize. Okay, so that's what we could use to describe it. And over here, your knowledge connectors were a lot of examples. Let me see what I had. So one is that it's a vocabulary routine as an example. Okay. So what is it not? Or some of these other ones that you put connections to, right? You put knowledge connection, that's your prior knowledge that you were linking this to. So you have a concept web kind of in your brain of these, but how does this one different? How is this one, what would be the things that it is not? It's a vocabulary routine, but it is not a clarifying routine if it doesn't do what? I like this. It is not copying definitions. So, and these little places, it's hard to do it on here, but you could actually check that below, is this a example or is it a description? So on the computer, it's a little too hard to get to those, but those would be different places where you could put in check marks. All right, it is not rote learning. Or I'm going to put this up with the, it's not copying definitions and it's not looking up synonyms. So those are the things that are not. So if you start doing that with your students, then we know we are not using the clarifying table. All right, so now that we have our term is clarifying routine, our core ideas, that is what we want students to remember, what we want you to remember when you leave here is that it is a research-based using evaluation to promote understanding and clarify meaning of words, phrases when teaching vocabulary. That's what it is. And we're going to remember that it's got steps to it. It's got linking terms to it. It helps the students understand vocabulary better. It is used for reteaching of people, places, ideas, and terms and events. But it is not students looking up things. So how could we put this? We need a sample sentence that shows that we understand these elements of the clarifying table. So if I were to write the clarifying table does what? What would we use to now explain, or the clarifying routine, sorry. I'm going to have to move this up. The text to speech is over top of what I'm typing. What would you guys say? Why don't you take a second and develop your own sentence? And I want each person to write in an example sentence. Thank you, Melissa. To illustrate applications and clarify routines. Thank you, Loretta. All right, let's see some more sentences coming in. I know it takes you a minute to put it all together. To promote and facilitate concepts and routines. Thank you, Rebecca. And Mona, the clarifying routine is a way to scaffold vocabulary instruction. Yes. And Pamela, the clarifying routine is a systematic strategy of vocabulary building. And E. Fitzsimmons, oh, they're going so fast, I can't even see them all. I love it, I love it. You guys have really understood the concept. For the sake of time, I would actually still co-construct this sentence with you, but I'm gonna drag my sentence that I previously had in, just so that we can see that I said the clarifying routine supports students master terms, mastery of terms, people, places, and events during co-teaching, reteaching, and is research-based to improve outcomes. So again, this is another place where your students may vary, but you're going to get input. You want to have your own done prior. So what I want you to do real quick is I want you to close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. I can't tell if you're doing it or not, but I want you to think in your head, when I say what is a non-example of the clarifying routine, I want you to think it in your head. What was what we had written down on our clarifying table? All right, when I say, what is something that reminds you, what's your knowledge connector? Which one of the ideas that we wrote down really resonates with you to draw those connections of what the clarifying routine is? All right. Well, thank you all. The last portion we just did, and it's hard to do it online, it's much better if you can do it in groups, is the review part. So once you're done teaching the do, which is going through each one of the steps, you also want to have your students review. That could be a turn, pair, share. That could be go and highlight something on theirs that they've just completed. So there's lots of different things you can do, but you've got to make sure that the class and the individuals understand what they just did and that they didn't just write it down. So make sure you're always including that review portion at the end. And I loved your sentences. I wish I could put every single one of them down there. They were great. So we're going to go back to our presentation now. And I'm going to give you guys because we've just done a lot. We're going to do a 15-minute break. Well, actually, let me ask you, do you want to take a 15-minute break, or would you like to do a 10-minute break? Then we're going to come back and you guys are going to build it on your own. So if you need to get any materials or anything like that, you're going to be able to build one on your own when we come back, and I'll walk you through those steps. So would you like to have a shorter break and possibly end sooner, or would you like to just take the full 15 minutes? All right, right now we're split. It's still 50-50. How about we'll do this? We'll split it in the middle. So I'll give you 12 minutes. I'll give you 12 minutes. And then that way, if we end up and we finish a little early, that's great. So we will go ahead and I'll give you a 12-minute break. So we're going to come back here at 12:42. Excuse me, not 12, 10:42. Everybody, welcome back. Hopefully you've been able to go into the chat and grab that Google version. It's a template. If you need to put more in so that you have more boxes, like I kind of did, you can have them on the side. You can also add text boxes. If Google Draw is not your thing, that's quite all right. You actually have on page 44 in your guidebook, you've got a sheet that you can copy, or if today, you don't have that either, you can also just make a piece of paper and kind of draw it out for yourselves. We will be sharing these tomorrow. So just know that if you end up using a piece of paper, you're going to need to take a picture of it so that you could be able to share it on your screen tomorrow when we work in small groups. So I wanted to just kind of give you that information. And then we're going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through each one of these steps. You may get finished prior to me moving the group on, and that's quite all right. You can actually just relax for a minute or two. But what I really want you to do is I want you to think, this is thinking. This is why we just don't go grab somebody else's clarifying routine, is that we as the teachers need to do the work that we're asking the students to do. We need to go through the process ourselves so that we have clarity of where they might struggle, or where I might, what different things that might relate that the students need to think about. And so I really consciously ask you to make, when you're doing this, you need to make your own, not just go find one on the internet and then use it for your content area. All right, so does everybody have a, is everybody ready? Do they have paper or the Google Draw templates or something they can work with? If you can give me a quick thumbs up or type yes in the chat. All right, we got some yeses and some readies. Perfect. Just don't want to start and leave anybody behind at the very beginning. Sounds great. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just look at the term. And you're like, hey, that's easy. But remember that the term is going to be a vocabulary word, a person, a place, or an event that has been learned or needs to be learned. And so you want to really consider what's important for all students to know this term, so that it's not a special, it's not like, hey, this is a fun word. This is like an essential understanding term, place, person, or event. And if you've got your book, I've got some review pages down there that you can see when you have your guidebook. But also for the rest of you, this fidelity checklist that I was giving you over here, this slide is what you can be looking at. So the word needs to be familiar to students. This shouldn't be like out of the box, a brand new word. So it usually is something that you recognize that the students need clarity on, because during the teaching, you've seen that they don't really have this, or you know that students normally struggle with it. But this shouldn't be the first time that students have been exposed to this word. Otherwise, you're gonna have real difficulty co-constructing with them if they've got no knowledge concept of the word. So you may have introduced it in a lesson or in an activity, or maybe in a reading, and they have context clues within that. But it shouldn't be the first time and that they're looking at it. So I'm going to go ahead and give you 2 minutes. Whoops, wrong part. Go ahead and give you 2 minutes to select your term you're going to focus on. Okay, now we've got our key term. So the next thing that we're going to do is look at then our next step, whoops, is going to be looking at the clarifiers. And looking at the clarifiers, there's a little bit more information I want to give you. So I'm going to go to the next slide after I read this, and then I'll come back to this one. And so these are details about the term that clarify the term's meaning. So this is if you could break down the definition. These are the clues that you want to make sure that the students have. And so just to kind of help with that, one of the things when you're selecting clarifiers is when it's a term, it's what do the students need to know about this term fully to understand its meaning. If it's a person, which of the accomplishments that you would list are critical to understanding this person in the unit. And that's where sometimes, you know, what's critical about this unit could change. And my experience doing history, George Washington and one unit was doing something that was important. But then in the next unit, he was doing something completely different. And so if I wanted to give them George Washington, I would really need to also, it could be different based on the different units that we're doing. And then also, if it's a term, what makes it significant? And if it's a place, and then if it's an event, what are the important surrounding facts? So this could be the leading up event, it could be it caused this event, or it could be the people that are involved, the date, some of those types of things. So we're going to work on our clarifiers. And so here, You can see that they are including details that aid in understanding. They may be a synonym or descriptive statements, and also concepts and words can be used. But please make sure everything is known by the student. The last thing you want to do in trying to help students gain understanding is to use a word they don't know to gain that understanding. So again, this goes back, this is why co-construction is really good, is that you can get the idea of where your students are with their words. So I am going to go back to this and I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go ahead and work on this part. And because you really need to think through it. And this is where if you've got standards or if you're, got the novel, that you really just take it out and you dive into it. So I'm going to give you 4 minutes. Someone asked if we could have the routine that we worked on. So I just dropped that in the chat. And this is the time you can direct message me. I am happy to answer any questions. Please don't feel like you are working alone. Normally as teachers, we'd be walking around the classroom right now, but I can't see what you're doing. So you're gonna have to self-advocate for yourself if you have any questions about what's going on.
I'm sorry, Morri, how do you get a blank sheet? I see yours. I did upload yours
Gotcha. So let me go get that link real quick.
because I don't have a book.
Perfect.
I can't take your stuff off. But
Yeah, no, I should be able to drop this in. Let me get my chat back. So this is the one that should work for you. Yeah, so this should open up and look like this.
okay, then I can just put them side by side.
Yeah. I was gonna say, and I think on this,
I think I saw one on there.
oh, I didn't copy it onto that template.
Yeah, it's not one on there.
Yep.
That's where I looked first. I was like, oh, I've got one on there. Okay, I need to put it side by side.
Mm-hmm.
we share this with you as we're working so you can kind of see where we are?
If you want to.
Morri, I noticed when I click on the Google Drive version,
Uh-huh.
it's not going to my drive. It's just like a spinning wheel. I see it, but it's not where I can type on it.
So,
Like I click on it and it opens up. I see the template and I see where it gives me the option.
to use
Uh,
template and then
yeah.
you're just spinning.
Yes.
All right, well, why don't, I'll see if I can get the non-preview version and just give you that.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. There's so many things
Right.
on the
Oh,
screen.
and look, where would it be in my drive? If I went to look at my drive just to see
I
if,
would just look at recent and see if it shows up there
okay,
and see if it popped in.
right. That's what I said. Maybe it's there, but I just don't see it.
But I wonder if you have any
Nope, it's not there.
things in your school that stop you.
Okay, that could be.
Just give me 1 second. I'm going to try and go find the edit version in mine.
Sometimes if you close out of the document and open it back up again, it'll let you in. That used to happen at school, during the school year,
Oh, right. Okay.
because it just gets jammed up from the system.
Okay. Because I
So
do
if it-
see other things that have opened up in my Google, like the
Yeah.
disability fact sheet is there.
Sometimes Google gets jammed up when you open a whole bunch of stuff at the same time.
Oh, yeah. So let me try that.
Who knows?
Thank you.
All right, I've got the original link. That's not the template link. So let me get that into the chat. If I can find out what I did with all my. There you go. That one might work better since it's not the template.
Thank you.
All right. Now you guys, everybody else got 8 minutes for that. So you should have been rolling. And there are, again, people are dropping in questions, which is great. And I see someone asked a question of, and I would say that make sure that you're asking this is for vocabulary. It's not for concepts. So if it's a concept, this is not
Okay.
right routine. Like this is for a term, a person, a place, or an event. There are 3 other ones that are concept routines. And what I find that we do a lot with students is that we're trying to build a concept and we're trying to make it so simplified as if it's a definition, which it is not. It is a bigger, much bigger thing.
Okay, got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so we do that a lot to our students. It's like our number one thing I think that really hinders their understanding of certain things. All right, so I'm going to move us on to the next one, which is the core idea. So this is if your principal or someone outside of the building walked in and asked your kids, "What are you learning about?" This is what they'd say. This is what they'd say is the core idea of what they're learning about. So it doesn't have to be the definition. is the core idea of what they're learning about. So it's a statement that's brief definition, or it's a summary of its importance. It is not long. It is really short. It's to the point. It's very specific. And so again, you can find this on pages 20, page 7, and then I'll show the fidelity checklist here. So it's a summarize of the primary importance of the term or defines the term, but it is simple, very simple. It's not elaborate. So make sure that you're not having them write like a small paragraph when they are trying to identify what their core idea is. So I will give us 3 minutes. We're going to move on to the next part. So now we've got our big parts. Now there's knowledge connectors, and I feel like this is the hardest for us because sometimes we don't know what's relevant to our students. And so this is where co-construction, you can have some ideas and you might have some knowledge, like this is what we learned last unit and this is how it would relate, that kind of thing. But it's a statement that's relevant to the world that the students live in. So it could be a TV show. Like in this example, my parents gave their blessing to move into an apartment on their own. That's what, if they had to go, like what's an act of being set free? That's a child's example of being set free. Or you can see this is a little dated, but the movie Free Willy, where they end up, it could be Dolphin Tale now or something else. You know, they free the animal at the end, the orca. So it's one of those things that, you know, they are going to need to give you the example, and you can have some ideas down there to kind of guide them. But this you might know that your kids are really into Pokemon, or you might know that they're really into Minecraft, or they're really into some other, you got a lot of baseball players in your team in your class or something like that. So this is you getting to know your students. So you have ideas of what you would put down here, but you are more than likely going to revert to whatever they put and morph that in. But you're going to need to have some ideas. So I'm going to look at the fidelity checklist again. And you can see here, these are just connecting to prior knowledge experiences. So I'm going to let you think about that one. And if you have something to put in, go right ahead. But really, we're going to move on to the next one because I feel like that one's hard to do without students, but I do want you to give yourself like a minute to think about it. But we're going to tie that in with the next part. But it is critical for you to do that one with your students. The next part is kind of 5, and I feel like 5 and 6 really go together. So the 5 is identifying or describing the examples. And then the 6 is what are the non-examples. So what is it? What isn't it? And so you can see here that used to describe when slaves were set free because of the Civil War. That is something that was true. So they related it to the unit's understanding. So this is where you might build some content knowledge. And this is why you had to have your students have some previous experience with this word, or it should have been used within the unit prior. So I'm going to go ahead and reset our timer for another 3 minutes for you to do your knowledge connector and your examples.
Morri,
Yes.
It seems as though I'm typing on a document that you're on. When I click on when I clicked on the other one that you provided, since I couldn't pull it up in Google.
Did you make a copy of that one?
Ah, that's what it is. It won't let me make a copy.
You go to file.
Yep, I went to file. I'm gonna have to go to file under, when I go to file under SIM clarifying table, when I go to file, you know how when things are not allowed when they're grayed out?
Yeah.
That's how it looks. I
Hmm.
can download it.
But you can't make a copy. Interesting.
But it won't let me
Download it, you're gonna have to re-upload it and then put it in your Google Drive.
because I see you popping up when I type in. I didn't know if you saw when I typed in hyperbole and then you typed in what does hyper mean?
I did not type any, I don't think I'm typing on anything.
Okay, so somebody who's anonymous hippo.
Well, remember I put this link in for everybody.
Oh, okay. So I see anonymous frog. Okay, so let me see.
Yeah, and so you should be able to, I'm gonna just drag this into you should be able, you can't clip here and do make copy.
Let me see. I think I can copy from there. Jeez.
And unfortunately, we only have 3 minutes and then they're gonna kick us all out.
All right.
I'm gonna move to the next thing, but if,
Okay.
um,
I mean, I can put this stuff on paper and then I can try to get to the document.
yeah,
And then
I'm so sorry.
That's no problem. It's
All right, and so our last part that we need to do is we need to do our non-examples and our sentence. So just to review with you, our non-examples are going to be things like here you can see it's the opposite. So the slaves ran away before the Civil War. And you have all of this information in your own presentation. And if I was going to look at my my checklist down here, I can say that things that you don't want them to confuse it with. And so sometimes these are things that you have found in the past that students do get it confused with. Or, this is where you're doing your synonym and your antonym and like all of that kind of stuff. And the last part is completing your sentence. And the sentence should mean that when they create it, they demonstrate the understanding of the purpose of doing the clarifying routine. So they can name the importance of the people, place, or term. They can understand and use the term within their own sentence. So this is going to be one of those ones. And you do have this slide of, the correct and incorrect. And then also when they do their sentence, this is what it would look like at the end. And so the sentences don't have to be so elaborate. Like, let's say this is a elementary, middle school level that Martin Luther King is a hero to many people in the world. And that may be enough, but you may want them to have some specifics from the clarifier that are listed in there. Or you might want to have some specifics from the core idea that are listed in there. But again, you are co-constructing this with your students. So they're going to take you away from me in less than a minute. So I would love for you to take the time to make sure that this is completed for tomorrow when we come in, because you're going to be sharing them out. Again, if you couldn't do it on the document, then please just take a picture of it so that you'll be able to show it on your screen. And with that, I will be in the chat, but I want to thank you all for your time, for your energy, for your effort. And I really appreciate you being here and working with me through this process.